Hey guys, welcome to the session on Coffee with Prabh. And today we have Mr. Praveen. And Mr. Praveen basically having a 16 plus year of experience in the IT and 3 plus year of experience in the enterprise architect. I'm sure the today video, it will be a eye opening for most of the folks because I personally follow some of the content of Praveen, and Praveen has given the good perspective about the enterprise architect. At least Praveen, I learn one or two information from your interactions. When I verify and validate that information, it makes sense. It's correlate those information, and thanks for taking out your time from your schedule for this particular session and giving back to the society. And I'm sure
Sure,
from
absolutely.
this particular video, the people get the visibility about what is enterprise architecture and what is cybersecurity architecture and how they are different or they are part of a component and all that. I'm going to disturb you a lot because I have some questionnaires with me, and these questionnaires are based on the feedback inputs from the subscribers, viewers, students who wish to know the answers in this particular session. So this is all from my side, Praveen. And thanks again. And really, it's honor for us to have you. Uh, you know, to share your experience and knowledge in this particular community.
Hey, thanks, Prab. Honor is mine. So let me introduce myself. My name is Praveen Kumar Sula. Part of Collins Aerospace. It's an aerospace industry. I think you guys pretty much know. If you know the aerospace industry, we have big giants like Raytheon Technologies, Collins Aerospace, Bombardier, Boeing, Airbus, and all the companies. So ours is one of the biggest aircraft supplier for Boeing,
Wow.
Airbus, and things like that. And we have a lot of engineers working on all the flights that you travel every day. So if you see Rockwell Collins or Collins Aerospace in any of the flights that you board, probably one of our engineers might have worked on that product. So I've been with Collins for about 12 years now. It's 12 plus.
Wow.
And I juggle between multiple roles. I've been a desk side guy, repairing laptops and things like that. I have been a data center, upgrading the switches and routers and configuring them. I have been a security analyst for a long time, working on client products like McAfee, Tanium, and whatnot, and been a vulnerability management focal for a long time. And I know the pain if somebody is trying to resonate that how difficult it is being a vulnerability management person. And I picked up one of the I applied for one of the roles, and I moved into enterprise architecture 3 years back. Ever since, it's been a learning journey, and I have transformed myself in many ways to accommodate what the team is asking, what the organization is asking. And I'm a great follower of your videos, and I've seen a lot of people talking about it. And thank you for giving back for the community, and I'm just trying to be part of that. And what I want to cover in this session is mostly all the gaps that we have and how does actually enterprise architecture fit into the organization, and how do we as a security personnel be a part of that and contribute to the organization. So that's what this is all about.
So Praveen, thanks for the great introduction, and it was actually a quite amazing, journey from moving from a desktop to the strategic level because I'm sure enterprise architects are more on the strategic positions and all that. It's really a good journey. So, when we're talking about the process of enterprise architect and all that, what is enterprise? What is architect? And why we need this in the organization? And if we need, what is the role of an enterprise architect in the organization?
Sure. Can I go ahead and share my screen
Yeah,
and
sure. Let me
kind of
give you
run
the present
through?
rights. Yeah.
Yep. All right. So as I said, it's going to be the introduction to it. And after this session, I'm sure you would try to fit in, understand, okay, I think this is what I need to do. This is where I need to go. This is how I need to pursue, right? So let's get started. So
Yep.
the enterprise architecture, if you look at from the left side, there are a lot of, it's a business, right? On the right side, we have IT. Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, we are not talking about security yet. We are just talking about enterprise architecture altogether. And there's business. We always want to be profitable. We want it to be, part of the business, move up, start increasing the breadth of your business, and make sure we stay in the market relevant, right? And we do not want to lose to your competitors. There is always things that are driving us as a business, be it new technology or competition, or there are regulatory things that come into picture, and we'll talk a little bit more about it. And we have to come up with some strategy, right? So we need to go somewhere. Let's say, if you take banking, there was all books one time and everything got digitized at one
Yeah.
point, right? How
Yeah.
did that happen? There has to be some drive to it, saying, you know what, I think there's value when you use computers. There are these XYZ, and I think if you spend $2 million on it or $2 billion on it, transforming the business into digitization, there's going to be $10 billion over a period of time. And business thinks about it, and they have a vision to move there, and they build the strategy, and they come up with roadmaps to kind of align with the strategy, and they wanted to go there. And they have all the IT on the other side, right? So we have technology, we have all the processes, we have people. There's a lot of talent out there to do a lot of things. But how do we connect these two things? Business wants to do something, and we have IT personnel who are ready to do. But there has to be somebody who can understand both the languages and also help them navigate, right?
Mm.
So it's the ecosystem that's getting complex, and we wanted to transform so we can thrive in the future. And as an enterprise architect, it's your responsibility to find that balance between IT and business fit together, so they can be profitable and we deliver value to the business. That is how it is. It's more like navigating through that complexity of people, process, technology, and business requirements, and bringing all together to one place, to ensure compliance, to enable growth, and so the business can effectively reach what their goals are. And one of the YouTube videos I've heard, one of the analogy is that if business wants to fly, architecture is their wings. So that's
Oh,
how it is. And it is a great team to be in. And it's just important that you always understand it's just not IT, it's always business too. So
true.
till now we have been thinking very deep into the technical aspects, right? What are we doing from a blue team perspective? What are we doing from a cyber GRC perspective? What's our compliance regime? Where do we want to go? What our audit says and whatnot? Now it is time, when you move into architecture, you need to think the other face of it, which is business, right? Business gives us the actual requirement, so we can go ahead and translate them into our technical requirements and bring all the teams together, help them understand where business wants to go, and we help them how to get there as well. Enterprise architecture is also part of doing the roadmaps and strategies along with the leadership team. So they know where business wants to go. They're also a part of all the objectives and goals that are being provided to the technical teams that aligns to the roadmap as well, right? So the architecture team is the connecting point,
Hmm.
and they have all the knowledge they need to understand business and IT. So that's what this slide is about, and I think that is what the key of the enterprise architecture.
So
Um,
can we say like that, like example, when we having a multiple technologies, multiple applications, diverse business and all that, enterprise architect is act like a bridge, which is used to connect all these dots
yes.
and prioritize in a such a manner that can create a value for an organization. It is aligned with the business missions and all that. Let's take example, we have a 10 systems or 10 servers, which is basically involved with multiple applications, and we're running a more than 100 business in the organization which has their own values. So
Yeah.
connecting those 10 servers with the 100 business, how to prioritize, how to integrate, that is how the role of enterprise architect come into the picture. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's everything that you have learned. You're going
Okay.
to apply it. So when you apply it, the way you apply it is thinking of all the facets of the business, not just
Mm.
IT and cyber and operations alone.
Okay.
When as an enterprise architecture, they do have definitions and things like
Mm.
that. This is one of the main slides that I wanted to walk you guys through. It's
Mm.
important. The reason it is important is that you know the connection of it, right?
Okay.
So they, in general, from a very long time, they had only 4 domains called business, data, application, and technology.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a couple of years back, every one of us is trying to understand that security is very important. And you cannot have security as a separate tower. It has to be part of all domains. So that's why you can see it's cut through business, information system architecture, and technology architecture as well.
Yes.
So if we wanted to walk us through, the middle is the business architecture, where you have all the business related stuff like drivers, goals that we spoke, right? So it's the definition of the structure and behavior of a business function that provides a common understanding, data structures, business applications, and how the data should be there, and define business strategy, governance, and all. That is all your business architecture.
Okay.
So you will have separate architecture for it. They are focused on business architecture. And the next one is data architecture, which is defines about functions, models of and data structures, and they talk about data and storage, data in motion. Who is trying to get the data from where? How do I transform this? How do I apply certain business models and AI and whatnot to transform it to a different way and provide some meaningful information to the leaders? And we have application architects and technology and infrastructure, predominantly all the computer network infrastructure folks, and the kind of technology platforms they bring in to support the business to run, the applications
Okay.
to run, right? And they work on that from a hardware, software, network, and facilities perspective.
Great.
And we have the last one, which is ours, which is security architecture. It's very funny, right? I mean, what do we do? So can we operate as a tower? Sure, we can, right? We can operate as a tower, and we have our own, services that we can do and all. But it is also important that it is a part of every domain. Meaning, if somebody is trying to build an application, we are part of that conversation. Somebody trying to bring technology into the organization, we are part of that conversation. So it's also how the business has structured the architecture team and other teams within the organization that would help us to kind of participate in those conversations. And we don't work in silos, right? Somebody else would buy a product, somebody else will do the configuration, somebody else will run the operation. It isn't like that. It has to be a cohesive, and there has to be one person who knows a little bit more about what is happening with the product and the entirety of it, right? One of the examples, you buy an application, the application owner, the application architect is responsible to understand, why are we purchasing it? What's the
Great.
business drive behind it? What is the life cycle of it? Who is it going to talk to? Who are the customers, internal, external, and whatnot? And the security architect would try to understand the same concepts as application, but in a different viewpoint, as in, how do I fit the security? Are they moving the data from here to there? Where is it hosted? Do we have any security obligations in there? Do we have any compliance obligations in there? How do we make sure that this application is hosted in the right direction? So security is in every conversation in these domains, in these 4 domains. So that's the slide about. So now that you know that we have BAIT, you generally call it like business application infrastructure and technology, and security domains in the enterprise architecture. Now let's see what we do, right, as a security architect. But before that, I think the question would generally comes, okay, now we are talking too much about enterprise architecture. Aren't we security architects ourselves? Do we not talk more about our technology, our processes, and all that we learned in CISSP, CISSAP, and whatnot? Sure. The only problem is that you're no longer operating on that level. You're no longer operating on the operations level. You are in the strategy. So the way you
Exactly.
look at things is 10,000 to 50,000 above feet. And it is implied that you know everything that's happening, but also you need to make sure that you align with how business is doing, and you help them understand where we are going from a architecture perspective as well. So
True.
when you are on security architecture, think about how business is running, how application is doing, and how technology is working together. So you are somebody cohesively understanding all the things, and you would do a lot of things as well. So the immediate question would be, how do I become an architect, right? How do I become a security architect? So the answer is more of um, you just don't become a security architect. You become an architect with security focus in mind, right? It's the architecture that is important, and you are the expert that are coming from security discipline. and you will apply all the principles that are needed from architecture perspective and be that security guy, right? An example would be, so if you go to talk to somebody who is doing a vulnerability management, right? And what they expect from you as an architect is, why did we even purchase this product? What did you guys see? Right? I'm not able to do this. I'm not able to do that. And you can kind of go walk through, like, what are we trying to do? What are we trying to accomplish? What are we not doing today? And how can we do it? And you should have the knowledge. And if not, you will bring the vendor and ask them, you said this is all there. How do we implement this? Let's go ahead and implement in a test box and see how that works, so we can go ahead and implement the production, right? From there to all of a sudden, all the way saying to the executives, as in, you know what, I think we missed one item in the compliance, and they said we are not compliant for this particular security control. How did we miss that? So you do a retrospect and try to understand why we did not do it, or did we miss to do it? Was that a misconfiguration or something happened there? And also see, how did the auditor figure it out, right? So what was his process? How did he do that, right? And you kind of talk to the technical folks, you kind of talk to the vendors and auditors, and come up with an answer to provide that to your executive, saying, hey, you know what, this is a miss, this is how it has gone, and this is the next steps that we are following, so we don't miss it in the next. And then all of a sudden somebody would say, I want to bring drones into the organization, I want to use drones in my organization, how do I do it? Well, again, you pitch in and say, okay, so what is the purpose, and how do I do it? What's the security control? So you're not constraining yourself to one particular discipline. Within the cyber also, you have to juggle between IAM, you have to juggle between network security, product security, ERP security, application security, whatnot. So you are everybody. But the question, as you have it on the slide, how do I become an architect like that? Well, you don't. You cannot become on a day one, right? It's a practice. So it's a practice, like security, as you say in all
It's
your
a
previous.
process.
It's a process. Over a period of time, you hone your skills to become an expert. It's the same process. So you think like an architect, you understand what is needed, and you practice it day in and day out, and you have your mentors to help you, guide you, nudge you, and whatnot. And over a period of time, you become an architect.
And
Um,
Praveen, sorry to interrupt here, but
sure.
one, I have seen a lot of myth about, some people say I want to make a career in enterprise architect. Okay. And they have a zero experience on that. So I think this is one of the biggest concern. And I've seen a lot of training companies also giving a placement assurance on TOGAF and SAPSA or in the
Sure.
custom enterprise architect. I'm sure you agree with me, or you can share your experience in this area. Is the fresher can work as an enterprise architect as his first job?
It depends on what's their definition of enterprise architecture.
That was
I'm yeah. So if you take TOGAF or SABSA or Zachman and all the other frameworks,
Hmm,
they don't say what's the fit definition. They'll give you a
hmm,
standard business definition as what architecture does. If a
hmm,
fresher can do it, why
hmm.
not? Right? But in
Okay.
my opinion, if you personally ask me, you have to go through that vigor, understand not just IT, not just cyber, but also understand different types of platforms. And as I mentioned here, if you take the business knowledge, you also need to have that business knowledge, as in, what's our organization doing today? Who are our competitors, right? What are the products that we are delivering? Who are our customers? What's our market right now? What's our share value? Why is it going up and down? Can one single vulnerability or an adversary to the company, what happens to my reputation, right? As a cybersecurity architect, how do I define that? So that business knowledge, and you are coming from a skill set on the top right? You have expert in security domains that you're coming from. You have cross domain experience, like what software engineers are doing today. Do you think that you can constrain yourself to, no, I'm cybersecurity expert, I'm going to focus only here? No, you cannot. You're not supposed to, because you're going to juggle between all these things. When somebody says, hey, Praveen, I see you're an architect, why don't you just come up with some kind of a framework for us from a secure software development lifecycle? So you're going to say, no, that's not my domain. No, you're going to work towards it, understand what business is saying, what are requirements, what are the standards that we have today in the market, how do I bring that into the organization, How do I roadmap it saying this will fit in existing processes today? Understand the gaps from the people perspective. Today, programmers are doing SDLC. That's a very traditional way of doing. So how do I inculcate secure programming in that? So I need to talk, you need to provide that process, and you need to talk to the manager saying what's the value it's going to bring and how it's going to be useful. So when you start one conversation, architecture is about end to end.
It's continuation,
Just
yeah.
you can't just constrain yourself to something. You cannot say, hey guys, this is SDLC document. You're going to do threat modeling. You're going to do this. You're going to do secure programming. And at the end, you'll have secure testing done. But you also help them navigate through certain things like what personal do I need? Okay, so what process do I need to apply? How this is going to yield some value to it? If I'm using Jira or ServiceNow for my software engineering purposes, how do I put those security aspects into it? Right, so they can go ahead and add some notes saying, hey, security testing has been completed. I've done the assessment. These are the things I have found. These are the mitigation controls you need to do. These are the things for the programmers, blah, blah, blah. So how do I get there? So the moment you see one simple definition as in bring SSDLC, it's your job to transform that into process, documentation, tools, and whatnot. So you'll get there eventually. And you have to showcase this to your business also, right?
True.
Business leaders, you have your technical leaders, and you showcase that. And if a fresher can do that, sure, I agree.
Okay.
And if you see the mindset, I think that's the first one I put there as a mindset. It's just not book, right? You don't need to read the book.
Practically.
You cannot think that, okay, I have done CASSP. I'm awesome. Yes, you are awesome. There's no doubt about it. You're a technical leader. How do you use those knowledge and things that you have learned into the business? It's like you're awesome on something. How do you bring it to the business, right?
True.
And that's what your key behavior would help you get there. Key behaviors as in like you're somebody who has to drive change. You have to be innovative. Your models that you're building should be transformed into different things, and you should take risk. You should have ideas. You should be curious on learning things. You are somebody who can promote new culture in the organization and whatnot. And you also have to mentor people. That's the same thing, and I'll keep telling, right? You have to mentor people so they can hone their skills over a period of time. And you would think like a leader, like CSSP. We always say think like a manager, right?
Yeah.
As an architect, you're a leader. You are a technical leader. You don't have people reporting to you. That's fine, but you can lead people to do certain things. So you're a leader. So you have to think, you have to help them and do a lot of stuff and play a lot of roles.
True.
You can be a strategist when you are doing strategies along with your leadership. You can be a consultant when somebody says, hey, Praveen, how do I get this? How do I fix this? How do I make it secure? How do I use this GPS system when I'm sending a box, right? What do I need to consider? So you would have all your hats changing whenever there is a requirement comes to you, and you play those roles. And one of them is a leader. So you're a leader. You would take a product owner when there is no product owner to present that. You would take not just a security, right? You would take a business architect hat when he's not present, so you can present his slides and whatnot. So you're not constrained, and that's why I tell you that it's just a journey. And you just start as an architect, and there's a lot of things that you learn, not just about cyber, but also about a lot of things in architecture, business, and whatnot.
That was a
And
very good point you have said about the experience and the visibility, because mindset comes with the experience. Mindset you cannot learn from the book,
yes,
because mindset is basically come from the experience, what you see, what you feel, what you do. Which I see, because CSSP or other certifications basically give you the conceptual idea.
yep,
But when you're going to implement that concepts in the organizations and all that, what is the challenge? What is the problem statements you have? That you can see on the ground only, right?
yes,
DHCP allocate and DHCP sign the IP, it is okay. But what is the condition of DHCP fail to provide the IP? That is
yep,
basically where the experience comes.
exactly. And it's implied that you are an expert already. So they don't even think about, once you are a security architect, nobody in the leadership and
Mm,
other other groups would think that um, do you have technical knowledge or not. It is implied. So whatever the decisions that are coming from your point of view as a security architect, they know that you have thoroughly vetted, You know who are the leaders in the market. You know what are the trade-offs. You know what is my return of investment. You also know what's the cost benefit analysis. It's
True.
all implied. So if they ask Praveen, is this the right product to come up with? They are expecting you to provide that answer based on all these things, right?
Agree.
They won't tell you, and you don't need to ask. It's part of your job description, so you
True.
know that this is what they are looking. And you can
True.
also sometimes you can also ask this question as in, we already have a tool, right? We already have McAfee. Why do we need something
One more
else? We
solution.
already have Trillix that's doing the same thing. Why do we need
True.
this? So you ask those questions to the business and challenge the status quo, saying, I don't see any value. Why are we bringing this into the organization, right?
Great.
And for that, I think I mentioned the soft skills and at the end and the bottom, right? Critical and analytical thinking. So you are somebody who can make decisions based on everything that we just spoke. Business communication, depending on who your audience, up the game. Take it to the technical details, take it to the business details. So if you're talking to a business leader, he has no idea how the scan engine is going to work,
True.
right? The passive, it's going to be intrusive. So if you talk those points, it's not going to help him. You will just say, hey, my scan engines are not going to be intrusive. I'll make sure your business is smooth, and I need some timeline so my scan engines can do their thing and find the vulnerabilities in XYZ. That's what they need. They don't need technicalities of it. So you would change the language, and when you're presenting to different leaders. So if you're presenting something to risk leaders, so what do you need? You need the risk thing in your slide. You talk about risk mitigation controls. You talk about risk identification. How did you assess it? How do you treat it? And when you're doing all this thing, you also say, hey, you know what? I think you have no business until this step, because we don't even have the controls yet. So once we have the controls, probably you guys can pitch in and say, hey, I'm going to do this. I'm going to say compliant or non-compliant. And you're going to talk about, you know what? I don't want you to treat this risk in this way, because you're just thinking about CIA. There might be one other aspect to it, because it's a different type of business, like manufacturing, or you're talking about product. So probably some other aspects come into that when we're doing the risk assessment. So you just have to bring those personal into the conversation. So you assess the risk properly, so you can have right mitigation controls, or you accept, or you transfer, you depending on what you want to do. So when you do those presentations and when you prepare those and talk to people, it's always changing. You're
Changing.
juggling
Yeah.
between people, right?
True.
So that is important as well. So the business communication is important. And these are typically some of the things that you can think of when you're thinking of getting into architecture team. And
Understood.
as I said, you're an expert already. So that's what you need to keep in mind.
That's good. So apart from that, having a technical certifications and all that, as I said, you talk about the mindset, business knowledge, skill set, soft skills is required. So when you're talking about the technical certification, do we really need a technical certification in the initial stage?
Oh, absolutely. Oh, absolutely. There's so your technical certifications are your credentials to prove that you have knowledge, right? That's the baseline or foundation. And anything you learn when you're implementing certain things, those are your working knowledge, and your tribal knowledge that you're going to give to people, your mentors and whatnot. But certification would tell you that you have the foundation knowledge on the domains that CISSP is covering, or if not, if you're doing OSCP, it tells you that you have a working knowledge on penetration testing, doing the web applications and whatnot. So if I'm hiring somebody, right, from so if you're thinking that architect, let's say I have an OSCP certification, I'm trying to relate, right? Okay, so I want to become an architect. That's my next technical goal. So can I be a technical architect? Sure, you absolutely can be, right? So what do you need to have an architect? Same things that we just spoke. But where are you coming from? Your core technical knowledge is your OSCP and offensive security.
True.
So where do you fit? So when there's an adversary, when something happens, when there's an incident response team working, so you would go as an architect there, and you will sit down and understand what's the impact, how much has got impacted. So you will note it down. You do not need to talk to the IR. You come back and say, hey, you know what? I think because of these 5 controls that are not properly tuned from a control perspective, this has happened. Or these are 3 applications that are not properly vetted. That is why, and they were exposed to the internet, and that's why this has happened. So you write a detailed report, and the incident response actually writes the reports and sends it to the team, right, to the leadership, and you would do the retrospect to understand how does it not happen again, and make sure either that might say, you know what, actually we need a product there. Probably we need to have a WAF in there to expose anything to the internet, and we will need to make sure that there is a MFA, for example, for somebody to need to log in if somebody used a brute force to get into the application or somebody shared a password, right? So those are the things as an incident response personnel, and you have a background of OSCP, can be a successful architect. But you wouldn't constrain yourself there, right? So in the architecture team, there might be 4 people or 10 people. They may overlap their skill set, so they can complement each other on certain things. You might have experts that are coming from network security, so anything that happened to network, so you pitch in and you bring them in. Like if you wanted a new network strategy for an organization, you would bring your SMEs from the network, right, to say, what's our network posture today? How do I get there? How are the routes today? So now the business location is in South Africa, so how do we route there? So do we need to have a transit gateway, or what do we do with that plan, right? So when we do exactly the same thing, when you're having experts from each domain, like network security, incident response, and IAM, you would bring in those people within the architecture team to have these conversations. And it is a team sport. Now we are just talking only about cyber, right? So we are talking about cyber now. We are constraining, again, as I said. So now we need to move back and say, hey, how do I become an enterprise architect? Now, this is just as a SAFE related program. Now they are calling it. We generally don't use it. But what they are saying is, hey, you're a system architect, you grow up to become a solution architect, you grow up to become an enterprise architect. And they say, if you're at a product delivery, you're a system architect. If you're at a enterprise solution delivery, you're a solution architect. If you're at a portfolio management level, you're an enterprise architect. This is one of the references for it. So I found it very interesting. So I just got it there. But technically, I would say organization will grow up and you would also grow along with it. And when you see your senior people talking about certain things at a level, you know that they are talking across the domains. Now we are going up. Now we are talking about business application infrastructure debates, right? And as a security architect, can I conversate part of application and infrastructure? So you're cross domain now. You're seeing where I'm going with that, right? You're not just constraining to cyber, you're going to infrastructure. You're talking infrastructure, you're also covering application. So you're covering more than one domain in the enterprise architecture domains. Now that'll make you to grow up to become an enterprise architect.
Okay.
You can have n number of levels. You can have junior architect, junior security architect who are doing certain things, learning, understanding, and you'll give them risk assessments to understand how it is going. You'll make him part of GRC to understand how they are writing policies and things like that, how are they treating risk and whatnot. And you can make him part of the audits that are happening, so he understands different compliance regimes and whatnot. And he quickly move up to talk about solutions, how the solution should fit, and other transformation projects that are not just for the business unit or for the department, but for the entire organization. So when you're talking about those transformation projects, you'll have people who are architects, but they assume the enterprise architecture role. And this level goes one level up. They talk a little bit more high level, little granular, all the way till the detailed design. But detailed design is done by your technical people. So that's just a reference. Don't get caught up with the titles or things like that. But if you ask me, how do you move up? How do you grow up? It's that you learn certain things one at a time, and you move up. You take over projects and you work on the projects and things like that. So that is this slide at the end. That famous question that what do we do, right, in the architecture team? So we generally are everywhere. Everybody who asks to help, we are everywhere. But in general, we do have certain set expectations to perform from a project perspective. Any project, as I said, you're part of it. Like we spoke about, right? There are a lot of domains, then security is one of the domains. If application is coming in, you're part of it, right? If a solution is coming in, if your network gear is upgrading to something else that Cisco is showcasing, you're part of it. So you are part of all the domains. and you're part of every conversation. That's how you have to see yourself as an architect. But it depends on the organization, how they do the job description for security architect, enterprise architecture, and whatnot. So typically what we work on mostly projects, like all said, and also reference architectures as in zero trust. Let's go zero trust,
Which
guys.
is the new one, yeah. It's a new
Right?
one.
So how do I bring zero trust into the organization? So you would go ahead and sit down and build foundational elements as in, okay, these are the 5 things that we need to do first. How do I do first? Go build the roadmap for it and showcase everything to your leaders saying, hey, this is how it's supposed to be and all. And the implementation team will start with bits and pieces. So they connect all the roadmaps to your strategy for achieving zero trust over a period of time. And we build strategies and roadmaps around it. Risk assessment. So you cannot get rid of it.
It's always
Wherever
there.
you are,
Wherever the new
it's
initiatives,
always,
risk is always there. Yeah.
yes. So whether you're buying a new business, selling a new business, buying a new product, it doesn't matter. It different levels of risk assessment. The risk assessments is always there, trying to assess the risk and bring it to the level where acceptable. That's the goal is, right? So that's what you would do. And you are a security consultant. When somebody is building a policy, you're a consultant. They'll showcase their policies and see if something is missing. What's the scope? Are there any terms that are missing? So there's one more thing I mentioned, right? Soft skills. Sometimes you would be doing pure documentation. Sometimes you're defining what this term means, right, to your organization. So you're writing definitions as well. So based on that, somebody says, hey, I write a glossary and this is what we are thinking. And this term is going to be used everywhere in the organization going forward. So you need to make sure you understand the scope, you are deeming it correct, and you refer a lot of standards and frameworks, what the term means to you. Example, industrial IoT. So what does it means to you, right? So what does industry say? What's your industry? How can you come up with a definition for it? And all that things. And you also frameworks that are always changing, and you always compliance that is there. The moment you put in data into it, it's like, oh my God, there's a lot of things that you talk about data, right? It's like, it's easy even say, oh, I want the data. Cool. So what is the data about, right? Is it, do you have some privacy related? Do you have any regulatory requirements there, depending on what country you are in? Do you have any contractual obligation saying, I don't want anybody from Europe to look at this data? So how do I control that? How do you build security models for it, right? That's where you are part of. And when somebody says this solution is going to change the world, it's going to do all this stuff. So you're there in that conversation, asking those questions, trying to pull everything, saying, okay, they're talking about doing some data encryption, right? How does it fit other application, not just this one? But the application architect is so focused on, okay, security is that, Praveen is going to take care of it. What are my business requirement? How does this application fits into the business? And you are very much focused into not just that, but also how can I take this technology and apply it to other application and make it a standard, right? Come up with documentation for it and whatnot. And you play different roles. I think we already spoke about it. And mentorship is really important. I think I'm somebody who love this concept of mentorship. This is something that will help you.
If you give me a 12 hours to work and do mentorship only, I love to do that work.
Oh, I know. I don't need to tell you that, right? So I love that aspect too. And I think there's a lot of things that we know from book. And when we do it, there's a lot of things that changes. And that practical experience and what do you do hands-on, how it can go wrong and all that things you would know, and you can have your mentors learn that. And it's not just the business language, it's not just the IT, it's the business language as well that you need. So all in all, I think I was able to cover a little bit of what enterprise architecture means. How do we fit into that? How we cannot constrain ourselves being cyber to grow up as an enterprise architect, because at the enterprise architecture level, you do not have a specialization there like enterprise architecture, security architect. No, you're a security architect. You're operating at the enterprise architecture level. So your focus may be there, but you have designations below as I'm an enterprise security architect. I operate at the architecture level. But the more you go up in the technical ladder, you would be an enterprise architect who will cover more than one domain and you have knowledge over it. So I just try to, kind of collect all the loose ends and I'm trying to pull together and say, hey, this is how you connect. Probably, I think it'll be helpful for anybody who's listening.
That is, I don't know what others, but for me, I got some different perspective about the enterprise architect thanks to Praveen, because I was in a different impression about architect because I did my AP and
True.
I was reviewing some stuff, but the perspective what I had about uh, enterprise architect or cybersecurity architecture, boom, thank you,
Sure.
because that give the really a good perspective. If you have a time, I just need your 5 minutes, where normally what happened, whenever I saw some of the videos or the feedbacks, what is missing in most of the videos is they don't share any practical reference. So if you have a 5 minutes of time, can you just, with the same diagram, can you just take a one example where you can take a reference like, okay, this is how the business comes, this is how the requirement understanding happen, and it will be great, I'm sure, because we don't know which video will be can touch or align with any candidate who watching this video and might be get a job based on that. So I was wondering that if you can spend 5 minutes on with the reference of diagram, if it's okay with you, where you can basically take one practical example and give the visibility.
Let's say you wanted to take cybersecurity to the factories, to the manufacturing. So OT world. Now you have a lot of videos that are coming up these days, right? So OT has become a new thing, and smart factory, industry 4.0, whatnot. Okay, so now that you know that we wanted to build cybersecurity into the factories, then you cannot just go ahead and say, hey, we are going to give all your detective and protective controls, and we're going to have this processes running, and you have these XYZ on your machines, constantly sending data to me, constantly sending log to the SIM. So we monitor and do this sort of things. You cannot do that. The business is different. The way they run business is different than the way we run in IT, right?
True.
So those machines are never meant to have our security products, and our security products have never been tested on those machines as well.
True.
So if you look at the difference, I think a lot of videos that I've seen people talking about it, right? So we have 1 GB, 2 GB RAM related machines over there, and they cannot stand a chance when McAfee starts its scanning. Or if you scan with using Nexpose or Nessus, scanning everything on the system, trying to fingerprint and trying to understand which operating system it is, it's going to take a lot of toll on
True.
it, right?
True.
It's going to go down. So what is that machine doing there? Is trying to send some information to another process that is printing something, and over the end of the day, they are sending $1 million related product to the customer. Now we want to bring cyber, but we are breaking it, right? So what do we need to do? So enterprise architecture would understand how the business is running there, and they talk to the vendors saying, you know what, your scanners cannot be so intrusive. What are the other methods do you have? Oh, we don't have any. Okay, so identify who are in the market, be it Dragos or be it somebody who can do that for the OT world. Bring them in, do a POC and see how that works, and take the feedback from the business saying, yes, you were scanning, but my system was still functional, so I'm okay with this. That's just one product. Now, when we are implying compliance on them, the moment you say, we're going to do compliant, we're going to make compliant, we are talking about all the controls, right? If you're taking CIS, you have certain controls. We come from a defense background, right? So we go by NIST controls. So if you're talking NIST 800-171, we're talking about 110 controls. How do I implement that? So that's the strategy that you would bring in. Not just at the control level, but also one level up all the way till you find the actual business requirement, which is I want to transform the business and I want to make it connected. The moment you say all connected, everything is connected. So one ransomware, everything is gone, right?
Exactly.
Right. So we're okay. Now as cyber, I need to do something. So how do I provide secure remote access? How do I provide secure file transfer? How do I provide secure networking? What do I need to do from a segmentation standpoint, from a network standpoint? What is my strategy for it? Can I isolate everything? No, example would be all the, so we do this in the risk assessments, right? So how many PCs that are non-compliant? Okay, 10 machines. So what are our mitigation controls? You either accept the risk or you segment it off, so reduce the risk, right? If I start doing segmentation in the factory, now everything is going to be in the factory segment. There's nothing is compliant yet. So what's my compliance story there, right? How do I build compliance over a period of time? So you go back to the drawing board and think about it and say, okay, so probably I need to have a roadmap for it. Or probably I say, if I have to abide 110 controls, I need to see how many PCs that can upgrade so they can be compliant.
True.
Now you need to go ahead and talk to the business folks or the operations folks, as in, can they be Windows 10? Oh, sure, they can. How many PCs? Maybe 10 out of 100. So your compliant from a client perspective is 10%, right? How do you increase that number? And you would talk to them like, what is stopping me to upgrade it? They'll say, oh, the application does not support. Oh, we never thought about it. Oh, you know what? I think the subsystem that is connected to it, it does not talk to Windows 10.
Mm.
So what is this subsystem doing? Oh, the subsystem is sending instructions. So this is a spiral loop that you're going in, and you have to take that loop to understand the complexity of it. So you break it down into pieces and, kind of apply certain things and move on. And you come up with your foundational requirement saying, hey, for this, there is no way you can be compliant. So what's my strategy for it? How do I improve client posturing if they cannot, be in the network? And the network guy comes in and say, I don't even know if that support DHCP. They are talking some serial bus and things like that.
Yes,
Oh,
yes.
now we are talking IP now. Okay, so this is how it starts, and it takes you all the way till to a level where saying, I need to be compliant and secure. What do I need to do? So that one question of business transformation, that I want it all to be connected. I want data to be, visible. So I can yield more transformation business and support what customer is asking today in a faster and secure manner. That is your vision, and that's your mission to go accomplish as a security architect. So you work with all the other architects to sit down and understand this complexity, try to navigate through it, as I said, come up with all the roadmaps and technology required to it, create a roadmap and create multiple projects to get there in so and so time. So that's how you can, put yourself in everything, all the way from the starting to the end.
That is a great information. And that was actually was missing. So thanks for that. That give the idea about how this integration happens. So Praveen, like what documentation we maintain when it comes to this, like when I say audit side, we call audit papers, risk
Yeah.
reports, and all that. When it comes to the consulting, GRC, and all that, we talk about the strategic plans and all that. So what kind of a documentation we maintain in the enterprise architect or cybersecurity architect, if I want to ask you?
So yeah, so we call them artifacts generally.
Mm-hmm,
Mostly when we do projects, we know how the project is built, right? So we come up with some. So based on all the models, SABSA and TOGAF, we have some tailored approach to it. So we have some documents called design approaches. We deliver artifacts for that are reference architectures that do not do anything with vendor, but the technology, as we spoke about, zero trust, right? So zero trust. So if I build zero trust reference architecture, it's going to walk them through the implementation to understand what are the components to start first. How do I understand them? What do I need to do as an implementation team from a zero trust perspective? The products required, processes required. If there are training required, that is also there in that particular reference architecture. Just one reference architecture, and the documentation that comes out is different. And we also write white papers, as in, if you cannot cover something within that documentation, we go extensively write about it, saying, you can take an example of factory wireless technologies. What do they use? They use n number of factory wireless technologies. We're just aware of only Wi-Fi, Zigbee, Bluetooth. They use a lot of low level frequency like UWB, BLE, and whatnot. And you need to write, if you need to write guidances for it, you cannot do in PowerPoint, right? So you will do a white paper and say factory wireless technologies, and you start writing about it. Like, what are the pros? What are the cons? You're talking about two different wireless technologies. Which one is secure and why is it secure? What are the trade-offs? And so on and so forth. So that's your white paper. And you also write some articles about how things are working, how things should have been working, and things like that. And you have different vision decks. This is our architecture vision for this one, and you would present them to leaders and things like that. And you have strategies that you build along with the leaders, and you have strategy documentation, you have roadmaps, and you have roadmaps there as well. And when you're doing something like, if you're part of policy implementation, right? So sometimes you would say, hey, along with GRC, why not just be a part of policy implementation? So you would write the documentation along with them. And sometimes it's a new technology and if nobody is doing something, it's your responsibility at the end of the day. So you write the documentation as in how it is going, how it is on. And sometimes we do risk assessment for it, for the product. And we have third-party risk assessments, we have whatnot, right? Sometimes these assessments, like you're acquiring a new organization, there is no process for it. So it's your own company process that you would define what you're going to look for. How do you know two different security postures? What are the things that are missing? What is your first step to do to connect them? What are the mitigation controls you would take? How much time would it take? So this is all documentation. You're just writing it down as a documentation, but you would be presenting very concise 3-4 slides to the leadership. But supporting documentation is always there.
That is why I asked Odin, because there is no proper visibility people has about the documentation people we have on this.
Yeah.
And thanks for bringing that concern, because documentation, without that, things will not work. So
yeah, and we also have an architecture repository, we call it. So these all documents live there, and we have a process to it saying 18 months life or 2 years life, or there is a technology change, you would go ahead and revisit the document or reference architecture, make the changes, and go through again, there is an architecture process that you would go through. You run through that process, get it approved, and put it back into the repository, so anybody who is referring it can see the latest and greatest information. So yes, documentation is absolutely important.
Thank you so much, actually, Praveen, for this particular information. So Praveen, if you talk about if someone want to make a mastery in this area, is knowledge is important, experience?
Yes. Oh, you're asking that question. Knowledge is important, experience is both.
Both.
I would say both. I would absolutely say both.
And what is the challenge, if you talk about what is the challenge faced by enterprise architect in the organization when they do their day-to-day work, something like that? Do you face any challenges?
Everybody might have seen, like, it's security is generally cost. So we've spent a plethora of our time to prove that if you do this, there are benefits, right?
Okay.
And there's no visible dollar amount that you can showcase. Like, I'm going to say, hey, this machine is going to produce 10,000 articles or something like that, and there's $10,000 value, and I'm spending $2,000 here. So over a period of time, I'm going to earn 8,000. There's nothing like that we can prove, right? So we are going to say, hey, we need McAfee to do this thing. We need Tanium, so it's an EDR. It's going to provide certain functionality, and it will provide some insights when we are doing incident response and whatnot. But this is all very technical level. I cannot. It will be extremely difficult for conversations to say that there's going to be amount involved to it, but you will save this much of amount. Instead, we'll take a different approach, saying, if it gets popped or if it gets hacked, you're going to lose $10,000. You better spend $3,000 now, so you can spend $7,000 tomorrow. And also, there's a customer reputation and as well in there, right? So when you lose something and somebody knows that this has been hacked in this particular organization, there's a lot of reputation that carries as well, and people do not want to buy or use those products, like SolarWinds. And we have always doubts when we are thinking about companies that are part of, but no company is, in my personal opinion, there's no company that is secured, because our hackers are head in the game. They have more sophisticated tools than us, and we are catching up. So
I agree. I completely agree with that, and it's all about how good you are in interpreting those, or interpretation of the anomalies or other behaviors what we can see in the systems. So so there is a myth people has that every company has one enterprise architect. Is it true, or?
I don't know. Maybe one person who is changing the hats from enterprise security and everything. So we don't know. Especially, we are hiring in some of the other areas as well in our team. The way we get the resumes and when we interview people, the way I see is that in our market, we are completely down to technical. Like, you ask something, they'll tell you everything about it. They are technically savvy, undoubted. There's no doubt about it, right? And they have credentials to prove it, and they'll tell you about the projects and all. But what we need is also what business is doing. That is
Okay.
the new facet that you need to understand and think. So there is no black and white. So in security, is like my way or highway, right? So no, hey, can you open port 80? No. So that's how I have been, right? When somebody says port 80, no, not happening. Go do 443. So we'll provide you the cert you need, implement that. What is stopping you to do it and all that stuff? But we never ask the question why. That is why. So we need to ask the question why. And there are times we'll have to ask the question, how do I operate this completely outdated machine or solution in the organization, because it is a heart of a solution? Instead of saying, no, you need to buy a new one, which is going to cost $1 million, I'm going to spend $1 million putting mitigation controls around it so I can safeguard that particular thing, right? So that's how it is. You need to think differently. There's always trade-offs to it. There's always business needs and cyber requirements that you need to try to balance out. That's the challenge that you would face every day.
Okay. Yeah, so that was actually one of my subscriber question on the architect part and all that. So
Yep, I
when
hope I
you
answered it.
basically, yeah, it was rightly answered, and I believe he get the or she get the information from this definitely video. So if you're looking to hire a junior enterprise architect who works under you, so I know it's a cheat sheets, but might be. So what is the quality you will look in that particular candidate? And normally, what are the frequent questions basically asked in the interview?
So as I said, right, from the skill set standpoint, everybody is cool. They
Hmm.
come, they do their stuff. They do
Hmm.
CISSP, they do OSCP. They come with that rich technical background.
Hmm.
And I have no doubts about it. Asking 2 questions, I know the depth of it.
Hmm.
But I'm more towards business and mindset and how does he tackle if there is a scenario. So it's questions like, I'll give you money, right? I'll give you process, I'll give you money, I'll give you time. How do you transform my business into more secure environment? So what I'm looking there is not all the tool set that you would bring in from identify, protect, detect, and respond perspective. I'm also looking at what's your approach. How do you think
Understood.
that should start, right? How do you assume that there are a lot of things in play in the organization? The organization is already running today. You cannot disrupt this. Instead, how do you bring in? That is approach. And there is always going to be roadblocks. I don't want to get there. I don't want this product. How do you handle that, right? What kind of positive attitude you bring? And I wanted them to be informed. I don't want them to solve. I want them to be informed, recognize the fact that people are resilient, but you need to bring cyber into it. There's always this
Understood.
user experience versus cybersecurity debate, right? There's always people resilient towards change, but we need change to do certain things. Of course, we do have compliance things that we can apply or imply saying, hey, you know what? It's not me who is talking. It's the government that's saying you need to use this. And there's no way you can get out of it versus how do you convey that message to them? And you cannot say one and done. You're a leader, so you accept risk, you accept failure, and how do you grow up? So along with the skill set, you need to have the mindset and big picture thinking to be an architect. I think that is not available anywhere. I just opened the can of worms. So
I'm sure this is one of the turning point of this video, and it definitely we will love it.
yeah. So I would want them to go look at all the TOGAF, SAPSA, and Zachman. What are they trying to say from a business perspective? Apply that business, apply your technical knowledge into business principles, and that's where you would shine as an architect.
Thanks, Praveen, and it is really a great talk. I have a scene in the technical area, to be frank, because I do a lot of governance interviews and all that. But this is, but when you're talking about overall process, what I learn is today I basically learn something new. To be frank, in
I'm
normal
glad.
talks or the talks, I basically validate the knowledge whether I'm right or not. But in this video, in this series, in this session, I really find some of the new pointers which I'm going to apply in my ISSAP sessions and in my
Absolutely.
consulting. And thank you so much for that.
Sure.
And team just want to know that whether shall we disturb again Mr. Praveen for another topic?
Oh,
Okay.
sure.
So it's like a gunpoint. We are recording, so he cannot say no to that. Okay. So do let me know in a comment box how we can disturb Praveen again for the new topic, because we have a same and we have a same agenda is you don't need to pay for education, you have to pay for your time, pay for attention. That's the most important thing.
Yes.
Okay. So we have experts, we have a lot of experts in India. It's all about how you find the right expert. The way I approach Praveen, the Praveen has reached out to me, and that is how we have coordinated. I requested Praveen, and Praveen has. See, it's not easy to taking out the time on weekend, especially when you already mucked up with Monday to Friday job.
Oh yeah.
So I really want to thanks Praveen to plan this particular session, and I'm sure I haven't seen any videos on enterprise architect which went so detailed. People cover about what is enterprise, what is architecture, but they don't talk about skill, how to do, how it works, how in industry works. So I really kudos to you, Praveen, the way you have drive this session in a more simpler manner, which is I think easy for anyone to understand. Thank you so
Yep.
much.
Sure. Thanks, Prab. And thank you for unflinching drive in you that moves you to kind of come up with these sessions and create more and more YouTube sessions and trainings and things like that. I like your work.
Thank you,
Thank you
Praveen.
so much for doing all that for the cyber domain, and I'm just doing my part of the domain. So thank you
But
so much
Praveen,
for
are
the
you
time.
okay? Are you okay to be back in a same
Oh,
channel?
absolutely, absolutely.
So we got the consent from our speaker Praveen. So we'll
So ask
definitely
questions. We'll come up with something for you guys, depending on what you are really wanted to learn. Absolutely.
I'm going to I want one more session on enterprise architect on the implementation part next time.
Oh,
So
sure.
if okay, after 2 months we can plan this session.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. So this is all from our side team, and if you're new to the channel, to subscribe to the channel and click on the bell icon to make sure you should not miss the future videos and expert videos in future which we are line up. And I'm sure we're going to bring out Praveen again and again for this particular session. Praveen, do you want to share any final note before we wrap up the session?
Yeah. The only thing I would say is knowledge is important. Certifications are good. Gain knowledge and pursue. Cyber is something that I have loved so much. I have a lot of respect and love for it. It's not a small domain. It's very deep, and it goes beyond certifications. And if just for a food for thought is there is a book of over 1,000 pages only on TCP/IP. Right? Just it's more than 1,000 pages. So you
True.
can have you see books so depth. Go ahead, and if you have that hungry for technical knowledge, go ahead and explore those, but also think how are we applying it. It's like you have everything that you need, but you do not know where to apply is another big problem. So you understand what business wants to do, navigate that with your technical skills and soft skills. That's all I
I
have.
completely agree with that. I completely agree with that. So this is all from our side team. Thank you for watching this video.